Hello, welcome to MCD1 Exam Prep Session 4. Now today we're going to do something a little different than we have in the previous sessions, in that we're going to hear from two of our Muley experts that have been deep dive studying on DataWeave as well as batch processing. So I'm excited for you to meet these two gentlemen. And you will find that as we move forward, first, I believe it'll be RJ that will be sharing about DataWeave. So you'll follow along with him on that journey. And then following RJ with DataWeave will be Manny with the batch processing. So enjoy, and that will be our session 4.
RJ, take it away. I'll start off with an introduction of yourself and then go right into your objective on DataWeave.
All right, sounds great. Thank you. Hey, everybody, I'm RJ. My name is RJ, and I'm going through the course here, learning to take the MuleSoft Certification Developer 1 exam. So not only am I wanting to pass this exam, I'm also wanting to learn everything that I need to know in order to do the job, do it well. I want to be a helpful teammate. And one of the weaknesses that I found that while I'm going through this course was DataWeave. So I'm calling it my nemesis. I'm kind of kidding, but in reality, I want to harness DataWeave and put it in my toolbox. So that's what we're doing today. We're going over one of my weaknesses, and I've learned a lot going through this and creating this presentation, and hopefully we can all come together and keep learning. I'm going to keep learning as we go. So let's check this out and harness what is available to us. All right. So DataWeave is everywhere. It's in APIs, it's in integrations, it's from the smallest transformations, and it's just really easy to get intimidated by it we're seeing it everywhere. It's not going anywhere, so we might as well just get cozy with it and find out what it's all about. When MuleSoft, where DataWeave came from, they realized that they needed to integrate different transformations when they're dealing with JSON and XML and CSV. They needed to integrate better. So MuleSoft actually had a team develop DataWeave around 2015, 2016. It wound up getting made. It took over and took the place of Mule expression language. That was like the old language that couldn't handle transformations across different formats very well. So when they created DataWeave, they realized, or they made it to where it would handle those transformations. That's why DataWeave is everywhere like it is now. DataWeave is the only language out there that can handle all of those different transformations the way it does. So that's why it took the place of Mule expression language like you see there. So I used to think that you had to memorize everything that is known to DataWeave. That is thankfully not the case. We do need to know some things, and that's what we're going to go over today, the things that we do need to know. And in order, like I said initially, not just to pass this exam that we're working toward, but also so we can do the work that's ahead of us and do it well. There's certain key elements that we need to get familiar with, and we're going to go ahead and walk through those so that way we know what we do need to know. So since we don't have to memorize every function, what do we need to know? This is going to be the core of our toolkit. This is what we want to take away from this presentation. This is what we want to know, and then we'll build on it from there. And I'm going to talk to you about how we build on that and how I'm currently even building on everything. We will, if you're confident in these areas, if you're confident in the things that we're listing off right here, then we'll be able to easily figure these things out. So what do we need to know right away? We need to know that there's core functions such as the map, the filter, pluck, reduce. We're going to go over all those. There's different arguments, there's different data types, and then there's the formatting output, and we'll go over all that. DataWeave is not just there's different ways of looking at it. So this surprises a lot of people. It surprised me too. You don't just modify data in DataWeave, you're actually transforming it. Each line of code returns a new value. So that's why the language is so consistent and why your logic stays so clear. This is also what sets DataWeave apart from all of the languages. Like I already said, there's not any other language out there that is going to do what DataWeave is doing. That's why it's become so popular. That's why it's everywhere that we look. It's handling the transformations in such a better way to where you can keep your logic clear. Let's go ahead and look at the anatomy of a DataWeave script. This is important. We're going to go ahead and we're going to break this down into 3 main parts. You're going to always, anytime you're working with DataWeave, you're going to see this right here, what we have in front of us. We're going to see the top up here that I have. Let me go ahead and get my little laser pointer going. We have a header up here. This is going to show you what version you're working with. You're going to want to match whatever version you and your team are working with. Default is 2.0. 2.0 is like the newest, and that's everything that we work with. That's everything that I've done. I don't know of a case where you would go with anything older, but there may be a case out there. The next thing that we're going to look at in our header is the output. This is where it's time to decide, what do I want this output to be? Do I want it to be JSON, XML, CSV, Java, plain text, or even DataWeave? You can send it out in as DataWeave in order for testing. That's what makes this language so phenomenal and such a valuable tool, is because right now you can decide out of all those different formats that I just named off, it can handle that. It can do that for you. The next area that we're going to look at is this delimiter. That's just 3 little dashes. That's like a separator. It's going to separate from the header to the body and let you know your 2 different areas. The next area that we're going to look at is the body. That's where we're going to find our actual information. We're going to find our expression. We're going to wind up looking at that and see that's where the logic actually happens. This is where your functions are going to be in order to shape your output. So before you even think about a function, we need to know, what kind of data are we dealing with? Anyone that's been developing in MuleSoft for a minute has seen this lovely little error that we have over on the right. This error is saying that we have a scripting language error. So I created that in AnyPoint Studio pretty quickly because I was giving some information out that it didn't understand. What are you asking for? Because I was asking for something that it wasn't looking for. So are we working? You have to ask yourself, are we working with an array of objects? Are we working with a string inside of an object? Or are we working with a number? There's all these different data types that we have out there, and getting to know your types and getting them straight is going to help you get the correct logic. It keeps you from running into these DataWeave errors that we don't want to see. We don't want to be having that happen. So in order to do that, we're going to need to simply map over you need to map things out correctly. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the order of things so that way we don't have these errors, but also just simply understanding that there are strings, there are numbers, there's a Boolean where you're going to see that's going to be true or false. You'll wind up having an array. We'll talk about these, where you have an array in your square brackets. You have an object, which is wrapped in curly braces. We have date and time. There's formatting for that. And then you even have no data sometimes, where you'll have a null. Now we can talk about functions. Okay, so we addressed where we have different data types, but we couldn't get into functions right away because we need to understand our data types. Now we can actually talk about these functions. In DataWeave script, we're going to be using functions, and there are a lot of them out there, but don't let that overwhelm you. It overwhelmed me a little bit at first to find out that there's so many functions. I'm reading this, I'm reading different books on DataWeave right now, and there's some really good ones out there. I can tell you about those later if you need to know, but I wound up seeing there's so many functions, but I don't want to overwhelm you like I did a little bit by seeing them all. We're just going to address the main ones. And on this list right now are the main ones. We're going to go over these, and I'm going to show you how they work in some examples. And these are the main ones that you're going to use in real projects. These are the main ones that you're going to see on the exam. Not that we're just only worrying about the exam. Again, I addressed a third time now. We don't want to just worry about the exam, but we also want to have real-time practice underway here. So these are the ones that we'll go over. We're going to go over the map. This is going to handle arrays. With map object, it will be looping through objects. The difference between these two, and this is where I believe I got that error that I showed you a little bit ago off on the right hand side. I was mapping over objects and it didn't like that, so I wound up getting a scripting error. So that's where it's important to understand your difference of data. You have your array, then you have your objects that we just looked at a little bit ago, and you want to know which function to use on those. We then have a filter function. That's where it'll wind up removing certain elements that you don't want to have. Think of it as a strainer when you're straining out certain things and you wind up with the liquid that you want in the end. We have a mapping, or not a mapping, I'm sorry, a calculator function. I'm sorry, my little pointer is jittery. I don't know why it's doing that. Let's see if I can get rid of this and see. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So reduce is like a calculator. It's going to aggregate, and it's going to give you totals and single values. You have groupBy and orderBy. I have easily gotten confused by these two, and we're going to have separate slides for those, and we're going to go over those and understand a little bit better the difference of those. They basically sort data, and they do it in different ways, and they are also looking for different data types. The next function that we have here is the concatenator, the plus. It's going to add things together. It's going to merge things. And then finally, we have default. This is a nice fallback for when you are going to have missing data and you don't want to have an error because you have missing data. You know that you have missing data. It's anticipated. You can use this default, and we'll look at that in the example. Now let's move to the next slide. I'm having to move my little, there we go. Okay, I'm having to move some stuff around here. My little Zoom thing. I'm just going to go ahead and try to minimize that. There we go. Okay, can everybody still hear me good?
Yep, doing great.
Okay, great.
Doing great.
I had to change some things. I kept having to move some stuff around. And all right, this is better. This is better.
Know the joys of organizing your stuff.
I'm sure. I'm almost like I need a third screen here.
And that is the truth.
Yeah, I mean, like literally. All right. So
I've said that many times.
I can see it. We have our first example here. Let's look at what we have going on here. We have our very first example. It's going to be really simple. We're starting simple. And we have on the left here, we have a nice small little input. Notice our input, and let's look at what it is. We have an object. We have our curly braces right there, and we have two little key value pairs, and it's going to be making us a very small payload. So this input is what we refer to in DataWeave script as a payload, and we're referencing it over here. So so once we reference that over here, we reference our payload as in both of our key value pairs. We're going to have them referenced together. What we're doing in this script here is we're concatenating. This is our first example, and we're gathering those together. We're going to wind up referencing that data and it's clean, it's readable. It gathered it together. It created a new field called full name. So we brought in the first name, we brought in the last name, we created a new field called full name, and then our output is bam, down there. It's nice and simple. It concatenated our two different fields and turned it into one field. And that is used a lot. I've seen we've seen the concatenation a lot, and that's as simple as that is. Now we are working with an array of objects. We have our square braces or square brackets, and then our curly braces, start and end, start and end. So we have two different objects. They're in an array. So we need to, we have to remember that. That's our data type. We have an array. So what are we going to do with it? In order to transform every item, we use the map function. We're going to use the map function because we have an array, right? If it was an object, if these square brackets were curly braces, then we'd have an object and we would use that map object. But we're not doing that in this case. So in order to do that, we apply in this case, we're going to, it takes each object in this case, which is a person, and it winds up applying the logic inside the arrow function. So see the arrow function right there. It winds up gathering it up just like before and creating a full name field. Two different full names this time though. So we're doing it over the entire array for every object in the array. And this pattern, mapping of arrays, is everywhere in real world use. It's going to wind up being used a lot. It's going to gather multiple objects and putting them out into the same thing that we did in the previous, but we just increased it by using that map function. Now that we have used the map function, let's look at how filter can help us remove certain things that we don't want. So in this case, we have people who are marked as active, and right here, so we have in our input, in our payload, we have inactive people. The active is false, active is true. We wind up gathering that in with the payload right here. So we just brought it in. Now we're using the filter function. We're going to filter over those people. We're going to it's going to go through and it's going to grab all people that are active, and it's going to send out, the output is going to wind up being only the ones that are active, and that was the one person that was active. This is useful in cleaning up data, shaping data, and controlling what moves forward. Kind of like I said earlier, where you have the strainer, it's just going to get rid of what you don't want and send through what you do want. Notice how our screenshots look a little bit different now. We were using AnyPoint Studio. Now we're over to DataWeave Playground, and I'll talk about that. These are really important tools that we can use, and I have been using in order to learn DataWeave. Now for this transformation, let's talk about this. We're going to go over the reduce function. We're headed back to math class, but it's okay. Don't worry. Don't stress. We don't have to actually do the math. DataWeave is going to do the math for us. We're using this reduce to total up some scores. So we have three different scores over here in our input/payload, and we want to bring our payload over. We reduce it, and then we wind up using the accumulator. It's another function, and it's called ACC for short. Each time it goes through the array, we're going to add the person's score to it. So what reduce did is it collapsed these scores down into one output. What accumulator did is it wound up accumulating, it added all those scores together. So those two functions just worked together to give us one final output, one answer. We wanted to know what all of these were all together. And this is simple. Like you could do this with something huge that you could wind up filtering out certain people. You could wind up, once you start building this, my brain is just going right now, and I'm trying to express it with my words, how I could wind up having like a huge database over here. Instead of just these three, you have a huge input, and you want to filter out certain people. You want to reduce it down to where you only have one output. You accumulate it all together, and then bam, you just got your answer, and you just made somebody's life somewhere really easy because they didn't have to go through all this information over here to get that answer. It's a calculator, and it's a whole lot more when you start adding the other functions to it. Now it's time to get organized. GroupBy is an organizing function. Let's look at the input over here and notice how we have different IT employees. We have an IT employee here, we have an IT employee here, and then we have a gardener. All right, everybody work with me here. This is a really special company that handles IT, and it also handles farm work. It's a crazy scenario, I know, but just hang in there with me. I made a really crazy scenario so that way we can clean it up and make it make sense. Before this information goes out to payroll, we want to clean this up so that way payroll can handle it and see which department they're paying and who they're in, and it's going to help. It's going to help them. So I've used the groupBy function in order to handle this and clean it up for them. We bring in the payload, we group by the person, and then it sends it out based on what department they work in. Now notice let's just notice something here. We're fixing to go into orderBy, but before we do, I want to point something out, how the output here has some keys at the very top right here. And what I've been doing in my mind is looking at that as though that is like a bin. That's like a container that this groupBy has now put these employees into, and it's created it to where you can look at these bins, you can look at these containers and see who fits into that container. And that's something that's very important. Now you have this key with an array of items underneath it. You wound up getting an output of an object here as well, because we see our curly braces. Now payroll has a better organized employees list that they can handle on that crazy workforce where you have IT and gardeners all mixed up. Now we're moving over to orderBy, and let's go over this and try. And at the end, I'm going to point out the difference of orderBy and groupBy. So it's exactly what it sounds like. It's going to sort by order, and we're sorting this array based on a field. In this case, we're sorting each person's score. We're going to go from lowest to highest. And just like groupBy, it is a function. And we're going to pass in an expression to tell it what to look at and how to sort it. Just like group, I already said that. So it keeps the shape. Okay, so let's go over the difference. It keeps the shape and rearranges everything in line. But what is different here? We wind up seeing that we have square brackets this time. So now we have an output of an array, and we don't have those bins. We don't have those containers where it's resorted everything. It's just rearranged everything like in a line. That's the difference between orderBy and groupBy. And when I visualize how orderBy is keeping the shape, it's just giving me everything in a different order, where we have our lowest score, middle score, highest score. it's not put them in different containers. And that is important when you're putting all these functions into DataWeave and expecting a certain output. Since we're now getting an array, you would need to make sure that you have certain functions lined up that isn't expecting something different, and we'll go over that. So what happens when there isn't any data? We already talked about this a little bit when we were looking at all of our functions. Sometimes you just don't have data and you don't want to get an error because of that. It's expected. It's okay to not have data in place. Your script can fix that, and it can help you with this one simple function called default. We have a simple input here. We're missing some information, and that's okay. This website or whatever we were working with only required a name. It didn't require an email. So when we came over here and we didn't wind up not having an email on this person, we used the default function, and then we gave an example of what we would like for it to say when there isn't any information there. That could say anything. This could say there wasn't an email, or you don't get an email today. In this case, we wound up putting not provided, and that is what it gave us in our output. We wound up getting our name because it was there. We did not get an email, and it gave us this information right here saying not provided. It's great for resilient transformations, and you can set these defaults up to work on strings, numbers, arrays, wherever you need it, especially, like I said earlier, when you expect that you're not going to have any data and you want to prevent yourself from getting an error. Now we're using the map and filter functions on a payload of 2 arrays of objects. We see our square brackets, and then we see our curly braces, and then another set of square brackets, and then curly braces. So that's showing us that we have 2 different arrays with objects within them. We're going to use this map function over here. And notice how we use the map function. We're mapping this out before we filter. Notice how we're doing that. We're trying to loop through one list and then look something up in another. In this case, we're going through each user first, and then for every user, we're going to use the filter to find the matching role. That gives us the right match for each record. If we did it the other way around, starting with roles with the map, or starting with filter first, we'd get a result, but we'd be flipping the direction around of the logic. It just works better if you map first and then filter. And there's other areas that you would actually wind up getting errors because you're not using the correct function first. But starting with the map, you wind up with the main data set you're working with. It's just a cleaner approach, and it brings up a great topic for our next slide. But first, I wanted to just address what we did right here. We wound up mapping over, we filtered out the data that we didn't transform. We just cleaned it up. It's looking much cleaner by doing that. Real quick, let's go back here. Okay, so this was something else that I wanted to address too. The header here, check this out. So now we're not just showing the version and the output. We have some different stuff going on here. Did y'all notice that? Anybody notice how we have these var users, and what is all that? So that's a lambda expression. That's where we're going to go into this next slide, and we're going to look at that. So a lambda is not just a function. We wind up having these different things going on up here. So see this u right here? That's the lambda. That's saying for each u in the users, we're gonna wind up referencing these variables up here. And I hope I'm saying that right. It's just the way I painted this in my mind and I may be wrong, but it's like a shortcut basically. You wind up having these lambda functions so that way you can have functions without names. It's like a shortcut. It's written in place. It's on the fly, and you're going to wind up using that so that way you can kind of shortcut what you want to be doing up here.
It's
It
true.
also
It's true. You're questioning yourself on that. And I just want to confirm that, yes, like oftentimes we will call it, something very simplified to identify that argument. So the U is actually an argument that you're sending in. And so it's like a shortened version of the, an example of what the other values that are going to be coming in there, like your variables. So
okay.
yes, yes.
All right. So I would say then same goes for this R. This R is referencing user ID, and it's going to also be a quick throwaway type function that is exactly right where we need it. And it's referencing all this up here. I guess, so for me, what it does for me is it visually cleans up our body. Our header's kind of, filled up with some extra stuff right now. And then you have your delimiter right there. But then your body, when you come down here, it just is quick and short and simple. And it helps it to not be so congested. It helps your body of functions to not be so congested since you're referencing all this stuff up here. And I can see where it makes it more flexible. It makes it to where you're going to run your map and your filter and your reduce without the need for full blown declarations. That's kind of just the way I see that. And uh, you know, we'll go with that. Here it is, the thing that I have mentioned so many times in this presentation that is so important to keep up with and make sure we don't lose sight of, and that is the function flow. When you're putting your functions in, you want to make sure that you're putting them in a good order so that way you aren't having an output of an error. You don't want to put a function in that's going to make the next function aggravated because it's not getting what it needs. For example, if you're going to use a groupBy and an orderBy, if you put your groupBy before your orderBy, you're going to make your orderBy upset because it's going to be needing an array, but instead, since it's coming after the groupBy, it's going to be dealing with an object made up of grouped arrays. If the orderBy comes along looking at this object of grouped arrays, it is going to throw an error. It's not going to work. Remember all those little bins, those keys that the groupBy makes, and then the arrays right after those keys? orderBy can't handle that. So instead, you would need to use orderBy first. Then you can use groupBy afterward to get your sorted bins after orderBy. It's all a matter of putting it in at the right place at the right time. Basically, the point is your data changes shape after each function. You've got to know what the structure looks like after each step, or your next function may not behave the way you think it will. That's pretty much the gist of that. So we talked about the functions, we talked about the structure, even the function flow, like we just talked about in the last slide, how important the function flow is. There's one last layer, and that's going to be formatting when inside your body. That's where you want to clean up your output. You want to shape how it reads and make sure it's user friendly and system friendly. You're still changing the data. You're refining how it's delivered, whether it's making a date readable. So, like we addressed early on in all the data types, you have dates. we can, in DataWeave, we can format dates to be human friendly to where a human can read this date better. Or you may be sending the date in to a system, and the system that you're sending the date into expects it or needs it a certain way. In DataWeave, you can format that date out to make that system happy, so that way that system isn't throwing some kind of error. Whether we could also be dealing with building a string, something simple as what we were doing earlier, where we're concatenating names together. We can make sure we are formatting it in a way that a system or the humans that are going to read that name would want to see it. And then making sure your missing value doesn't break your response. This is where DataWeave scripts become polished. You just want to polish this up and get it exactly like it needs to be. Wherever you're sending it, wherever you're putting it out there, it has to be exactly how they want it. And that's where you just tweak these things out. You have to just get it just right to make everything and everybody happy. When formatting these, we've already looked at the general formatting, but one thing that I haven't shown you yet is how to manipulate the date and time in a response. So I was just talking to you about how you can manipulate the date and change the date up. And I'm going to show you an example. And in that way you can see this in the script. This top script here, in my opinion, is how, say, a human would want to see the date. It's manipulating it in the year, month, date format. There is a whole bunch of different ways of formatting dates out there. I don't have enough time on this presentation to show you all of them, and that's okay because I don't have to. When you're doing this, you can go out there and you can learn all the different ways that a date can be formatted. And again, it's going to depend on how that job or that requirement is looking in order for you to decide on the format that you go with. If you wanted, like say May 4th, 2025, there's a way of having it actually type all that out, just like this time down here. There's tweaks that can be made to make it exactly how you want the time formatted.
I will tell you, when you are working on projects, that conversions like that are sadly, well, I shouldn't say sadly, but they are a big part of some of the work that you'll do, because we'll get certain data formats off of maybe an older system, or it needs to go into another system a particular way. So those formats are very valuable to know and to be familiar with.
I can see that now. Is that something that needs to be committed to memory, or is that just something that's going to be
No.
it's going to be
Yeah.
job requirement
Job relevant. Yeah.
relevant? Yeah.
Mhm,
Okay.
mhm.
And that's what I saw, because there's just so many of them. There's so many ways of doing all this, and this is just like simple compared to some of the stuff that I was seeing, where you can go into full on dates and times, and it's you can do math, you can get math involved where it can say times in the future or times in the past, all sorts of stuff that I was seeing. So that's good to know. All right, thank you for that.
And another note, when you're trying to go into Salesforce, it's easier if you use application Java and for dates. And after you format it, you put as date, because I tried, I played around with it a lot, and trying to go into JSON with like the strings and the format, it always throws out or usually throws out an error. So the best way I found when going into Salesforce, and correct me if I'm wrong, Diane, but this is what I noticed, using application Java, and for example, using as date after you clean up the format. But it's kind of client based as well.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay. That's good to know. I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah. I can see where you're eliminating all the strings and everything and coming into a different way of doing it to kind of clean things up. Okay.
Yeah, what it does is, it sets the expectation on the type of object that it is when you do it as a Java class format. There's one way to do it there. So there's some, it goes deeper. It goes deeper. So
That-
yeah,
That's bringing
it's
up our
very
next.
true.
That's bringing up our next slide. It goes deeper, and that's why we're kind of wrapping this up a little bit. But in our next slide here, that's what I wanted to talk about. Is there's so much stuff out there, just like we're talking right now. So much information, so many different ways of doing things. Where do we go from here? I'm not gonna stand here and tell you that I've got all this figured out, because I promise I don't. You're probably listening to me and you're like, man, he's stumbling up on his words a little bit. And I am, because I'm still learning this, y'all. I can go, and I'm not reading any script right now. Like, I love talking to people. I can talk to y'all right now all day about some other stuff, and I won't get tripped up on words, but I'll get a little tripped up on this DataWeave still a little bit. But building this presentation, I have learned a lot, and I'm going to keep learning because of what I'm showing you on the screen right here. So my initial screenshots were from transform message. That's in any point studio. Absolutely love it. I was getting in there and I was building stuff out, and I was grabbing my screenshots. I was doing a bunch of other stuff too that probably ate up into my time. But that's okay, because I was still learning, and I was doing things that I didn't even involve into this presentation. I was just taking it all in. And then the final screenshots were on DataWeave Playground. That's where you want to go. Just do a quick internet search. You'll find it. It's super easy to get to. And I'm sure all of y'all in this little course right now, in this team, we all know this, but these are so beneficial. And I'm just, speaking to myself right now, saying that we've got to get on there. We've got to keep practicing, keep seeing this stuff, keep using it in order to get comfortable with it. It's gonna be super beneficial, and I'm committed to getting stronger and to doing it. So I hope everybody else here is too. We don't all have to be a DataWeave master like Digital D. We just want to try to do our best to get this DataWeave tool in our toolbox, so that way it's not so much our nemesis anymore. It's gonna actually be harnessed, and we'll go ahead and grab the DataWeave and put it to good use in the toolbox. And that's all I got. That's all my presentation, y'all.
Woohoo, very good, very good. Like I'm an expert. No, that's one thing I will tell everyone, and I tell this to a lot of people in training sessions, is it's so vast that you really have to just plan on, like going through the syntax of it, going through the trial and error like you did. And, as you continue to work with it, some things you can commit to memory, but I still go back to the complete syntax and, really build it out. So well done. Well done.
That's what I'm seeing. I appreciate it. Like I said,
Yeah.
I'm tripping up on my words a little bit, but I'm learning. So I guess that's
Yeah.
the main goal,
It is. And the just being real about it is a big part. And some of what we're doing here to go over some of the objectives on the exam are for learning's sake. And
Right.
take what you see here, expand on it into even more, like Ahmad, what you were saying, on managing some of the types, even using Java. If you want to share some of those, like take it that next level. That is great. That is great, because these are things we're going to see. Now, it may not be exam relevant as much, but it's still going to be part of what we are going to see as we're working on projects. So
For sure.
well done.
Yep.
Well done.
Sure.
You did
Thank you.
really good.
Appreciate it.
And by the way, he did that all on his own. I did not coach him at all. I didn't even see the presentation until today. So
Nobody did.
well,
I told you I was going to practice on the family here, which is kind of laughable, because everybody here, my wife, she's great at photography and doing what she does, and my babies are all babies. So it was going to be kind of they joked a little. They said, "Daddy, are you trying to put us to sleep?" Because I said I was going to present this to them as like a practice round. Well, we just got busy, and I haven't had a chance to do anything other than I glimpsed at it this morning and made some final tweaks, and that was it. And yeah, so that was straight off the hip is what they call it.
very
Thank
good. Very good.
you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, very good. And this will be
Glad to be
recorded.
learning.
Yeah, very good. This is recorded, by the way, everybody, as you know. So, you can have access to this to have for review, because some of that's so helpful, especially the order in which you do certain things. That can either, make it or break it sometimes,
Yep.
All right. Finn and Manny, either one of you are up next. Who wants to go next?
Yes, Dan, let me go then.
Okay, go right ahead.
Yeah.
Let me get off camera here. And there we go. All right, Manny, all you.
Yeah, just let me know if my screen is visible, Dan.
Yes, can see your screen.
Oh, that's good then. Okay, and just come up with some interesting topic and the capability of the MuleSoft. So before that, let me introduce myself. So I'm Maniandan Tangatari. Just call me as Mani. I have 4 years of experience, a MuleSoft developer. So I completed my certification in 2022. I'm just going to retake it again now. So this is the now in this section, so we are going to see about the batch processing. This some of the interesting thing that MuleSoft offers to us. So let's go one by one. So at the end of the section, just we are going to solve some couple of the batch processing things like MCD questions. I just come up with that something, yeah. So here, so what's the batch processing? So batch processing is like most of the companies are using that to process the large amount of data in the structured and controlled manner. It has this port based like input, and it will start processing the each record by record, and that will be taken care by the batch step. So in the next slide, you will get to know all those things, and there is one more page called like on complete. So yeah, this is the batch job. So batch jobs will work on it will like kind of for loop. So it will get all the payload, and it process each record asynchronously. So these are the configurations. So when you just drag and drop the batch processing, the batch job. So there you have the batch name. So what's the name? What's the purpose? So you have to define it here, and then the maximum fail record you can set by default. It will be like 0, but when you set it as a -1, so the batch processing will keep on running even without considering the incoming payload like failed records. And then when it comes to the scheduling strategy, so it has like ordered sequence and a round robin. So by default it will be like ordered sequence here. So it's nothing but if several jobs instance are in executable stage at the same time, the instance execute one at a time. That's the order sequence. When it comes to round robin, it's nothing but like instance of a job using round robin algorithm. It will use the round robin algorithm to assign the record to the available resource most of the time. So most company will go with its ordered sequence here. And when it comes to job instance ID, so each batch job is created by the batch processing are given by some kind of ID. So batch block size by default it will be 100. So it's nothing but the size number of record given to each thread for execution. And also we can set the maximum concurrency here by defining the number of threads to our batch processing. When it comes to target, as can see this target thing in multiple places, like it's nothing but saving the outcome of the payload in some variables. That's here in the batch job. So when it comes to batch steps, so here the thing is so interesting, like it will start processing it by individually, like when it comes to 100 records. So batch steps take a single record, and there we will keep some kind of target something, so to process each record that. And then we also set some accept expression here, like for example here for the accept expression we can keep like payload dot age is, if the age is greater than 27, so then only it will go into this batch step. And also we can also keep some accept policy here, like no failure or only failures and all. When it comes to accept policy, no failure, so batch step process only those records that succeeded to proceed in all preceding steps. When only failures, batch step process only those records that failed to process in a preceding batch steps. All in a sense, it will take all the records. so it won't see anything there. When it comes to aggregator, so it's nothing but like we are going to group the thing that's processed by the batch step. That's called as batch aggregator. So we are going to aggregate things. For example, if you process like around 100 records in the batch step, you want to group by 10, 10, 10, and you want to hit the system to the bulk insert or something. So here the batch aggregator is pitching to the face. So we'll use that in most of the cases. So to do some bulk operation, here it comes to batch aggregator. We also keep the size of the batch aggregator. So when it goes to the hands-on section, I will tell you so how things will be work in batch aggregator. So it will be like fixed as streaming. If you keep streaming, it will be like all the records are processed. And this is the final stage, is like called as incomplete. So here this is the last phase of the batch processing. So it will like here this is the option stage. So these records provided in the batch processing, it's a kind of the report it will give. So here we will do like how many things are like processed or failure something, and most of the company will keep some kind of alert or something, or like email, a kind of connector, so they will send the report here using this in the incomplete phase. So let's see something here. So I come up with a couple of MCD questions. So at least whomsoever is going to take the MuleSoft developer level 1, at least they have one question in this batch processing, and it's like a tricky one. So just let's keep some breakpoint and let's debug this flow. First, let me explain this one. So here, like I'm just triggering this flow. Here I just drag and drop one batch job here, and I'm just keeping the payload as like some kind of array, like 6 records here. In real time, you have like multiple objects, so array of objects you have. So either you need to process each by record, and you need to do some CUD operation on that. So this is a simple kind of example to get to understand you how about the batch processing will get to work. So let's see. So
Yeah,
so
this
here,
this is great to see this one. I remember this is one of the practice questions, right?
yeah, that's
Yeah,
correct. That's correct. And
Mhm.
yeah. So so here I'm just setting the payload like 6 records here. So and the the batch step. So I'm keeping the filter here. When this, I'm keeping the acceptance condition as like mod 2. It's like kind of if you are going to do some mod operation. So if it comes to 1, the mod 2 will, the remainder will be like 1. It's nothing but you all know, like, so if the even number comes, the mod will give zeros, the condition will be satisfied, and then only it will go inside the batch step. So that's how it will work. Let's see now. It's the trigger is debugged. So let's go. Now it's the now the payload is like 1 here. Or it comes to 2, it will go inside and it will multiple. And again, when it comes to 4, it will go and it will multiple. Now it's 6, it will multiple. Meanwhile, if you see check the logs in this logger, is just printing the payload. So I'm just aggregating the things with the size, the aggregating size is a 2, so it will group by the 2. So for example, you could see here in the logs. So when it comes to the 1 is not processed because the mod condition failed, so it won't enter into the batch step, so it won't multiply by 10. So when it comes to 2 and 4 is the even number, is go inside the batch step and it multiple by 10, and the 2040 came here. This is the first step of the aggregation because the size is 2. And then the next it will comes to 6. Because 5 is an odd number, so it won't enter into the batch step. When it comes to here, so it's processed, and 6 into 10, 60. So the aggregator has nothing after that, there is no payload. The 6 is the last one, so it's printing. So this is how the batch processing will work. So here, if you go, there is one MCD question on this, the same thing. Yeah, this is the one. So here, this is how the question will looks like. So you will get a input payload as like array of numbers like 1 to 6. They will ask like, so they will just give you the code. You need to clearly see what's the thing, like the acceptance expression. So here it's like mentioned like payload mod 2 is equal to 0, and you need to clearly see what's the condition you have aggregating, like the size of the aggregator is like 2. And then this is kind of the tricky question you have in your MCD. So now you could clearly understand the problem here. So when it comes to logger, it will print only 20 and 40 and 60. So the answer will be for this question is like this one, that option B. So how these things work, like the same, like when it will comes to batch step, and it will check if it's even number, it will enter, and it will multiply by 10. Okay. And then for the 2 and 4, it's grouped and it's printed. And again 5, it will come, so it won't enter into the batch step. Only the 6 is the even number, it will enter into the batch step and process. And aggregator will take that because there's nothing after the 6. So this is the one of the tricky question you might have in your MCD level 1.
Yeah, definitely. And that's where understanding, sometimes notice how you get the XML code for the exam, right?
Yeah.
And so you really have to count on reading that XML code so that you understand exactly what the configurations are. So, you don't have to be an XML code expert, but you do need to understand XML code enough to be able to figure out what it's filtering on, or what it's searching on, to even go into the batch step, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's correct. We need to make sure we don't need to be like just assume the flow. Okay, it will be like go each, but we need to see carefully what's the acceptance expression, like what's the condition, how they are grouped, what's the size, and then only we need to come up with the options. If you just blindly, if you see the flow, you can figure it out. There is like some conditions are there, the size. So for sure, there will be like one tricky question you might have in your MCD level 1 like this. So let's go to solve one by one. So I just come up with like some kind of tricky question, batch processing. So let's go to this one. So on the left hand side, you have one code like, so as that, yeah. Let me go back to the normal view. So I'm just, this is the thing. So as like the scheduler will trigger the flow where having the variable called like counter, and just the value as 1, and the payload is like array of numbers like 1 to 3. So now batch processing will get into the place, and the by default configuration. So here I'm inside the batch step, so there is no condition in the batch step, so it will run all the things in the payload. So this counter is going to increase by 10. So when it's like 1 for the first time, the loop is going, since we have a 3 record, so this batch step is going to be invoked for 3 times. So for the first one, like the counter will be 1 plus 10, and then again it will is 20 and then 30. And there is one variable called stepwise. So we are going to, I'm sorry. So we are going to save this counter, the incremental value in the stepwise. So on complete phase, we are going to print this both variable, and let's, we are going to see what's the final output. So, okay, this is the flow, and this is the code. I just want anyone to just say some options, so just to think, and let's see. So then you have anything, so what's the probable option? So if it's wrong, it's no problem. Anyhow, we are going to debug and see. If anyone knows, just say like,
Yeah,
so
that's a good one. Do the debug and show it. And I
yeah.
want you also to pay close attention to the variables that are available and set before the batch job and the variables that are available after the batch job completes. Because that is also, so you have, look at the variable of counter that's set before the batch job, and then the one that is also set in the batch step. So let's see how this plays out.
Yep. So let's debug this flow. I'm just keeping on breakpoint here.
Wait, Manny, before you do that,
Mhm.
why on the Word doc it shows you have the logger outside the
one you want to
batch
see?
processing. Yeah, and then can you show the one on the Word document? It's
Yeah.
Outside of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just we'll move and see. It will print and we'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah, something is already running. Let's stop that and let's debug this one. Let me go to debug mode again.
Nothing better than seeing it run. So
Yeah,
if you
that's
have
correct.
not built these out already, I recommend that you do, because you'll see it in action.
Understood. And let's see. So how it will work on this. Let's solve this logic. So how this code is processed by the MuleSoft. So start debugging. So now we are going to see the scope. The interesting thing is like we are going to see the scope of the variable. So how it will, what's the value outside the processing the batch stop. So after completing, so what will be the variable? So while the batch processing executing, let's see. So initially the variable is like we are setting the counter variable as 1. So you go see the value as 1 and the variable name is counter, and we have that's the value. And then next stage we are setting the payload. The array size is like 3. We have 3 records here. So the batch processing going to 3. So before that, so batch processing, so it will be like hold and it will go to next processor. So the incomplete will be like it's printed. So let's see that it will be like mostly like it will print what we have initialized. So there is no variable. So how it will consider like, so the thing is like it will, before we are doing something, so it's directly it will go to the last processor. You got it right, the point. So what we have defined initially, so that value we are going to be carry at the end. So it doesn't matter. So what we are going to do with the variable inside the batch scope, and because this you could see the step var as null. So how this mule will think like we didn't define anywhere any variable called step var, so it's returning as null. But even though we have step var here and we are going to do something there, we are going to saving that counter variable inside the step var. So let's see. So even though here we are incrementing something, the batch step will you could see the value is 11. And if you trigger again and again, it will be 11 only, like it won't increment like something. So that's how the option for this question is like option A will be the correct one. You guys got it right. So how things are working, this batch processing is like if you come up with the batch processing, the variable whatever you are doing inside the batch, it doesn't matter. So when you are going to printing the last logger, so it have the same values like initialized before doing the batch processing. So the counter is 1 and the step var is thing as like we didn't define it, we don't have any step var, so it's taking as null. So the correct option is A for this question. Okay. Yeah, let's move on to the
That's
next
a
one.
very good one. The variables are very tricky.
Yeah,
They
Yeah.
were tricky to me until I started practicing with them. Once I started practicing with them, like Manny just showed us, that started making sense. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's correct. So we need to make sure the scope of the variable. So how does the scope exist? So that is like kind of tricky question. You might have it in your MCD level 1. You need to be very careful with that. So let's solve the next questions. So go back to again this mode. So as like, so here in this question, so we have trigger a HTTP trigger, or like we are going to trigger the serialized thing. But so we have a payload, like 3 records we are going to have, and we have 2 batch steps. So here, so each batch step have something like some variable we are going to save the payload, and in the next batch step we are going to increment that variable with 10, and then we are going to set that variable as a payload and see what we are going to log. So here, so we are going to logging this all this variable and payload inside the batch step, not in the last step. So we need to make sure of the scope of the variable. So what's going to be logged here? That's the main tricky part of this question. So if you read this question, the payload 1, 2, 3 is passed to the batch job scope in the batch. Step 1, a variable named batch step payload is set to the current payload. What is the value of the last log message after one batch stop is completed? Okay. So let's run this one. Let's debug this one as well, and put some breakpoint, and let's see how things are working. Before that, let me stop that existing one. Let's debug it again. So what are you guys thinking? So what will be the correct answer for this one?
I really do know this one because it was one that was getting me. I think if I remember correctly, it's going to be A.
Yeah,
Because it ran through. I'm visualizing. I'm a visual learner, so I visualize what it did. It would run the 11, and then it ran the 12, and then it ran the 13. So the keywords on that question there was, what's the last log message?
yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. You are correct, man.
Okay. Oh, awesome. I remembered
Yeah.
something.
Awesome. Yeah.
Good
So
job
let's
showing
see
me.
how things are working now. Let's debug this flow. So we have 3 records, so it's going to be executed one by one. So first it will invoke the first batch step. So here we are going to set the all the 3 things, and then we are going to the next batch step. So here we are first, when it comes to see here, so the value of the 1 will be incremented to see the variable. So first record, so initially we have 1, so it increment plus 10, so it will be 11. So for the second one, it will go and it will process, and now it will be like the variable is like 12. Okay, 11, and then it will again process. The payload is 3, so 3 plus 10, it will be like 13 after running this component. Yeah, 13. So then let's see what's printed in the logger. So at last is like the 13. So the question is like, what value is printed at the end of this batch job? So the value is 13. So you are absolutely correct, Ajay. The value is 13 for this. We say that, man. Okay. You guys are, I hope so. You guys are good with this one. Let's move on to the next question. So this is also one of the interesting question you might expect. We need MCD level 1. Let's debug this one. So here the question is like, so we have one flow that it will be triggered by scheduler. So we have a payload like apple and banana. In the batch processing, there is no acceptance like condition in the batch steps or nothing. So we have two batch steps here without any condition. So we are going to uh, since we have two record, is going to iterate to the two records. Let's see. So initially the payload we are going to append with 1. In the batch step 2 we are going to append with 2. And the question is like what's going to be printed in the incomplete phase. That's the question. So what we have, so the input array of string is passed to the batch job, which does not do any filter or begetting. What payload is logged by the log component? Okay, so in incomplete we have one logger. So let's see what is logged there.
I love this one.
Yeah,
It's almost mean.
I think it's done already. So
It's
mostly the
good.
incomplete will have this one like kind of how much is like processed or something. So we will get the report of the batch processing at the end of the logger. So the answer for this question will be like the summary report of the batch record. So whatever the thing is happened, so we have two records, so two are run successfully, and there is no zero thing. So that's the thing. So it's has debug it again. So I didn't get the breakpoint, so it went right away to the end. Let's see how this is processing. This is also like kind of similar question. So in incomplete, so we are going to print the payload. So what's the thing? So the same thing. We have a payload like ABC, the array of strings. So 3 records are going to process, and we are going to do upper. So it's like as we taken the data, we just know we have one upper. There's like kind of function that MuleSoft offers, so we can do the capitalize like small a to capital A. So each we are going to convert to capital the A, B, and C, and what's the thing is going to print. So these are the options. Like total record processed 1 success record and 0, and the payload is we are going to print 3 records we have processed successfully, and here as well you didn't see any condition like batch step condition acceptance policies or something. There's nothing. So for sure it's going to process all the 3 records. This question is like similar to this one. So here we are going to have the payload. So all the 3s are processed. At the end, it will give you the report of the batch processing. So how many records are processed. Only the summarize the report here. As like same that question as well. So if you go and debug it, so it will give you the summary. So here you have 3 records. So 3 will be processed successfully, and there is no since we don't have any acceptance policy, so it will process, and there is no fail record on that. So the option for this question is as well is like C. Total record we have 3 ABC, and it won't return what's the payload at the end. Let's see here. Maybe I missed to put the breakpoint. Started? No, it's not started. at the end of the batch stop, you don't see the payload. So even though if you do some kind of operation here, like upper the case conversion here, so that converted thing will not be in the report of the batch scope. So let's run this one. We have 3 record. So all things are like here we are going to capitalize. So I think the format is like in Java. So once the batch up is processed, so if you check that one, you will not get the payload here. So you will get the summary of the report like total record, and you will get the how many is record failed and the success one. So it's like you will get the same kind of what's going to be printed in the after the completed the job batch up. So for this one is the option is C, so you won't get the payload. So these are the interesting couple of tricky questions you might expect in your MuleSoft MCD. There are some more like kind of hands-on question like this, solving some logic, not only like kind of theory question. So you guys before going to MCD level, taking MCD level 1, so we make sure you are good with batch processing. There you might for sure you will expect one question under the batch processing section. That's all
Very
about,
true.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Very true.
And before going to this one, make sure the scope of the variable and what's the acceptance policy each, and just take the code. Don't go select the answer blindly and think through the logic. You don't have anything a kind of compiler to check at the time. I will recommend you to do some practice before going to the exam, so that you will get to know how things will work in real time with the batch processing. Yeah, that's all from my
That's
side.
great
Hope you guys
advice. That's great advice there, folks, for sure. The hands-on, we cannot stress that enough, can we? It's just seeing it work, how it's working, what it's doing, and then it really gives you, applause. Well done, Manny. Appreciate that.
Yeah,
And so, that's the critical part is working it, seeing how it's going to work. Watch those trick questions. I think that logger question, in the incomplete is kind of like a trick question, but it's a good one because if you're expecting for a payload value there in the incomplete segment, there's not. It's the report. You're getting
yeah,
your essential report of the results of the batch job. So well done. Really
yeah,
well done. Both of you, RJ and
Definitely.
Manny.
That was a huge,
Top notch.
that was huge. Yeah, that seeing where the logger is, I knew the answer on that one too, but I wasn't going to say anything. But practicing those out, I wound up committing that to memory. So, yeah, hopefully everything moving forward is going to be similar to that, where we wind up seeing things that just make sense. I like it after you practice with it, see it, and it makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Very true. Very true. All right. So we are going to really wrap a little bit early today, mostly because I know Finn and Ahmad, privately discussed with me that they're going to be ready in another point in time. So this is great, though. We got 2 really strong objectives covered here. Will be spot on for Friday morning for our second session this week. And I'll do a little recap of both of the presentations of where they fit into our session agendas, because those are also being put in an order of a session in YouTube. So as long as I have your approval, RJ, and Manny, your approval, that will be incorporated into your recording. Will be incorporated into that whole series that's going to be on that is already, as you know, already on YouTube. So I will be sure to, again, like I said, with your permission, to put it there, not monetized, nothing like that.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's not a problem at all. Go for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Manny, you good
yeah,
with that
no
also?
problem, Dan. You can
Okay.
upload it. Yeah.
Okay. Sounds great. Sounds great. Manny, in your case especially, if you have any jar files that you would like to share as well, because I know you built those out, and taking it from the practice exam and having it built, is really helpful. So if you want to share that, we can add it to the maybe in GitHub. We can add it where there's a link in the comments of that YouTube channel, because I know that I don't have all of them there yet, but any of the resources of things that we've done so far, I'd like to include in that, so that, whether you're studying or someone is studying, they can go to that and just go ahead and click on them and have a good, strong, resource
Yeah,
there.
that's correct, Diane. So they could also refer these things. Yeah, I will share all those documentation and code. Maybe we'll commit this code in GitHub and we'll just give the link there and give the status like public access, so that anyone can clone it, and they will also debug and see how things are going in real time with the batch
Sounds
processing.
great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that will work. Yeah,
That
we'll
sounds
do that,
good.
Diane. Yep.
Okay. Very good. Very good. All right. Well, we have our meeting tonight. Let me stop the recording. So thank you all. That's going to wrap up the recording for this session. And there we go.